that are missing it, they will be able to see everything and hear everything that we have with us tonight. So for those of you that you know someone planned to attend but did not make it, be able to share that. So we'd be looking to put this on the county website for those that are interested. So what we're going to do briefly is just kind of go through the various elements of the survey. And I'm going to be handing it off now to Megan Sullivan to take us through everything. Megan.
Thanks, Brian. We're still on the title page. There we go. So the agenda for this evening is to discuss the purpose of this meeting and the background information related to this project. We will go over the survey and the preliminary results that we have from responses, and then we'll answer any questions or comments and discuss the next steps for this project. The purpose of this meeting is to talk about the intention behind the flood buyout land management survey, to discuss the current results and answers that have been submitted, and to answer any questions or comments that you may have. This meeting is not for the Gills Creek Greenway, any projects that the City of Columbia has in the area, or any other ongoing projects or developments. We will make a note that if you have any questions or comments that come up during the meeting, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and we'll answer all of those at the end of the meeting. For some background information, after the flooding, which occurred in October 2015, a major disaster declaration was issued, and this allowed Richland County to apply for FEMA disaster relief funds. Richland County was able to acquire 20 properties in the area around Timberlane Drive through a flood buyout process using those FEMA funds. Because of the elevated risk of flooding on these properties, Richland County is responsible for removing any structures and converting the sites into natural areas that will be able to better absorb the floodwaters. And on the right-hand side of the screen is a map of where the properties are located, and we're going to give you a moment to just look at that. So for some more background information, a survey was sent previously to the residents of this area to gauge their interest in the different types of land use that will be allowed. The survey that we're doing right now is a re-engagement effort with the same survey format in order to determine if the opinions of the residents have changed over the last few years. And on the right-hand side of the screen is the survey. The hard copy of the survey, which is the one that you see on the left, was mailed to residents on Friday, February 5th. And the online version of the survey, which you see on the right, was opened at that time. The online survey is still open to residents if they would like to submit it, as well as we can still accept the mailed copies as well. If you did not receive a hard copy of the survey, you can provide your input online. We would like to note that we want the responses to the survey to be encompassing of the entire area of properties and not just answered in relation to one particular property. As of March 12th, we have 58 responses for the survey. The most common responses so far has been for naturalizing the space and adding a trail, followed by just naturalizing the space. This closely mirrors the responses that were given during the previous installment of the survey. We've also received a few requests for different projects to be built in the space, but we think it's important to note that we're bound by FEMA regulations, which require that any development be minimally impactful, given that these properties are flood prone. And this graph just illustrates the answers that we've received so far. If you have any questions or comments at this time, please type them into the chat box and we'll be addressing them as they appear.
So John, in relation to that map, it only includes the Richland County buyouts. It does not include any of the City of Columbia ones. I will say though that for most of the area, I'm going to scroll back to that map real quick. Most of those properties that are along Glen Haven, and then further down along Tall Pines, a lot of those are city-owned properties now. Same way, all of the large parcels along the creek, the city does own those as well. So a lot of it's kind of intermingled. This is definitely a donut hole area. So, you know, we're going in between City of Columbia jurisdiction and Richland County jurisdiction with a lot of it. So it's kind of going back and forth. But in regards to the map, only showing Richland County buyout properties. So Valerie, we will discuss a few of the next steps after we talk a little bit about the questions and comments. But in general, it's going to be closing out the survey, analyzing the results, and then developing with having that second meeting, and then developing a plan for how do we go forward with that preferred option and what makes the most sense. So with the county be working with the city on plans, I think we're definitely going to try to work with them in partnership. I mean, obviously, whatever we do is going to have some bearing on what they do, vice versa. So I think it makes the most sense to try to partner in some fashion. So we will definitely be looking to try to work with them as much as we can in regards to what occurs. And if anyone is having trouble finding the chat box, if you do the Alt plus the H key, it should pull up the chat box if you're having trouble finding it. So John, when will the residences be raised? My understanding is most of those have already occurred or in the process of occurring. I'm not sure what the status of all of those are yet. I know all of the buyouts have occurred, but I'm not sure about the demolitions. That's something that I will make note of and we can look to include in a future presentation. Let's see, Chris, how many total surveys were mailed out? I'm not sure off the top of my head. We generally did a quarter mile or half mile radius from the sites that are shown on the map. So I want to say it was about at least 500 or so residences. Not sure off the top of my head for sure, but I can find out, and we'll definitely look to include that in the next presentation as well.
For reference, when we sent the survey last time, it was sent to an even broader audience, and we only received 60 responses back, or about 60 responses back. So far our response rate has been pretty good this round.
So John, are there any major issues with invasive species? I am not sure. We have not necessarily been given any notice in regards to invasive species, but Valerie is saying yes. So Valerie, do you know which, if any, invasive species those might be? You can include those in the chat box as well if you'd like. Phragmites, English ivy, privet. Okay, so mostly invasive vegetation, it looks like. Okay, thank you, Carmody. Valerie. Okay. All right. Yes, so Trish mentioned invasive feral cats. Yeah, definitely could be problematic, but much less so, I think, in terms of looking at some of the potential outcomes with this. So for Nan, survey said turn in by the 25th. So hopefully more will come in. What models have you studied for restoring natural vegetation? So we have not necessarily looked at any models or methods at this point. That would definitely be something that we're looking to include and do as part of the implementation of this. Once we have a defined use, so once that is determined and that is verified, that would be part of that land management process, is determining those methods and that best course of action for it. So survey, okay, so Nan, your comment survey said turn in by the 25th. So I think we were looking to have them back by the 26th. I don't have the notice in front of me that was sent out, but you would have until the 25th, or excuse me, the 26th, so that Friday, to turn anything in as well. John, so Valerie, are you open to suggestions for models? Yes, we're open. Whatever models, methods, suggestions that y'all may have, we would be open to anything that y'all would be open to share with us. John, what happens to Timberlane Drive? Is it maintained so long as property owners still live there? So yes, so there are at least, I think there's 3 or 4 private owners that are still along Timberlane Drive. So we would not necessarily be able to close it as most people would probably like, because all of the properties on there would be owned by some type of public entity besides those 4. But as long as those 4 are there, they would still need to have access to those lots. But if those were acquired by county or city or whoever, then the likelihood of Timberlane Drive becoming, a closed right away is a little bit more viable. But until, and as long as those private owners are still there, closing of Timberlane would not necessarily be an option. So yeah, it would be maintained as long as those owners are there. Carmony, Clayton with the counties looking at reforest, et cetera, for the area. Would this be part of so this is effectively what that discussions, I know there was some with Clayton, Carmony, yourself, and I think with Trish and Valerie and others with the Watershed Association. This is effectively kind of part of that outcome. So re-looking at what the previous input had, verifying it with this survey, so that way we can make sure that we understand and have a more determined idea of the path forward for what the plan for these properties should look like. So this is kind of an offshoot of that effort and that thinking. Trish, so those homes are in the middle, are condemned. Any chance they can be acquired through some avenue other than FEMA? I'm not sure. I mean, I guess that possibility always exists. There was obviously, I think, attempts as part of the buyout to get those properties acquired. So I'm not sure that those owners, at least at the time, were not necessarily willing or able. That does not necessarily mean that in the future they wouldn't be. So there's still that possibility that exists. I think that'd be one of those, we'd have to cross that bridge when we come to it situations, versus being able to really speak more definitively to it at the moment. Carmony, great, thank you. Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions, thoughts as it relates to the survey, the buyout properties, et cetera? And again, we are recording, and we're gonna look to post this on the county website in some place. I'm not sure where that would be yet, but we are recording it. We're gonna look to post it. So if you did know folks that we're looking to attend, but we're not able to, we're gonna have that available there. Likewise, if you have any other questions or comments that you wanna provide, Megan's information is at the bottom. So that's her email there. Any other questions, any other comments, reach out to her, and we'll make sure we get you a response. But I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Megan, and we're going to kind of talk about some more next steps.
So the survey will be open until Friday, March 26th at 5:00 p.m. If you've not already and you're in this meeting, please submit your responses by then. The second public meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 14th at 6 p.m. And we plan to discuss the final results from the survey then. The Zoom link for that meeting will be posted on the Richland County website's events page. And given the comments that we had earlier, we'll double check that the Zoom link is correct. After that, we'll begin moving forward on the planning and then the implementation of the different land use options.
All right. So is any further questions or comments at this time as it relates to kind of those next steps? All right. So it looks like we just got somebody else joining us. Daniel, so welcome to the meeting. Glad you're joining us. So kind of to recap for you, going over a little bit of the background, looking at background of the process, talked about the survey. So right now we're kind of looking at some of the next steps, as well as taking any additional questions or comments. We are recording this meeting, so for folks like you that have not been able to make it earlier or are not able to attend at all, we're going to be looking to have this available on the county's webpage so everyone can still see and hear the discussion and have the presentation. So again, questions or comments. So Nan, so you will do what the majority wants to do. Yes, so we are looking at the majority of the results. So looking at those preferred options. So looking to see, what is it that the community is wanting, but also looking at what makes sense. So for instance, if everybody were to say shelter and bathroom, well, okay, obviously that's the preferred choice, but we also got to think, is that going to be the most practical and the most feasible option, especially as it relates to the constraints of the site and the restrictions that are on it. But generally, most of the options, we're expecting it to be something similar to the previous, as the preliminary results are showing now. But generally, yes, we would be looking at the preferred land use option as the input details. So Chris, is there any possibility of combining land uses such as naturalized area and stormwater project, maybe at opposite ends of the area? I'm going to say that there's a likelihood of that, yes. Because as you kind of look at a lot of the land use options in terms of choices, they're very similar in a lot of ways, or they include several components that exist with each one. So for instance, you know, we have naturalized only, but then we've got naturalized and trail, we've got naturalized and manicured as those different options. And so I think based on the input, as we look at it as a whole, that's where the analysis is really going to give us some of these things of here's what preferred options were, what makes sense, and how do some of these relate to one another. Because again, if we have a significant amount of people that are saying, well, we want more of an active green space versus more of a passive green space, but everybody still wants, you know, a naturalized and trail or whatnot. You know, we got to look at these as a whole versus just looking at them as an individual input option as well, I guess, from kind of my thinking. So yeah, so we would be looking at these kind of in conjunction as a whole versus a kind of, I guess, one-off measures as they make sense. Valerie, isn't the whole area stormwater project and that floodplains absorb stormwater? I mean, I guess I'd say that's relatively true. Yeah. I think more so in terms of looking at the land use option in terms of the stormwater project, it would be looking at ways of how do we enhance those stormwater functions. So whether that's looking at retention efforts, absorption, et cetera, where we're not going to continue to look at, you know, increased runoff or shortened periods of absorption. I'm blanking on the right term that I want to use, but I can't think of it. But I feel like it would generally be that as it relates to any type of stormwater project, because again, like you mentioned, this is generally looking at a stormwater project in and of itself. So, but again, looking at ways of how we would enhance that, looking at resiliency, et cetera, from that kind of component. So, any other questions or comments from everyone? All right. Well, again, if you have any additional comments or questions, you can send us an email. We will make sure that we address any of those that we get that come in after this meeting. You can send Megan an email, send myself an email, either way. We'll get them. We'll look to provide you a response back as we can. And the same way, some of those questions from earlier, as we can, we'll look to include some of that information in the next meeting's presentation, so we can provide some more response to it. But we thank you for your time this evening. We thank you for coming out, listening to us, having your questions, comments addressed. We appreciate you being here with us, and we appreciate you sharing your evening. But again, any additional questions, comments, send us an email and we'll get back to you. Otherwise, we look forward to talking with you on the 14th at the next meeting to go over the results. So with that, everyone have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you then.